It has been our custom for some time now. Once we have practice session, we go for a talk and a discussion. And on Sunday, we usually don't have a talk, but we have the practice session and the discussion session. So for the sermon or the talk, we have selected a discourse given by the Buddha, and that discourse is sort of the handbook for those who practice mindfulness. And that discourse is called Great Discourse on Four Foundations of Mindfulness, or some call it Four References of Mindfulness. And in Pali, it is called Mahasatipatthana Sutta. So today we are almost going into the last section of that. So therefore, I will try my level best to relate what we have discussed already for the benefit of, to refresh what we have discussed already for the benefit of the newcomers. Right? And this discourse has been given by the Buddha in a town called Kammasadhamma, which has been a trading town in India. In that town, almost everyone has been practicing mindfulness, some sort of mindfulness, some technique of mindfulness. And to that place, Blessed One has gone and said, there is only one and only way for the purification of beings, and he has given four other reasons, right? So Buddha's word is that this method is the one and only way for the purification of beings, for the purification of beings made, not to wash our clothes or wash our body, but to purify our mind, right? So he has, the basic technique he's saying is, keep the mindfulness to the fore. You can be mindful, but not just mindfulness for the sake of being mindfulness. You will have it always in front, in the driving seat. Right? So by keeping mindfulness to the driving seat, he is trying to understand this creature called I am. Right? And it's $1 million question if I ask someone, or if you want to explain yourself, always there will be something attached to it. I am so and so, I am this, I am that, right? But in general, if it makes sense, what is that? Who am I? Right? Is what the Blessed One is trying to understand. So he is basically not mentioning directly in the discourse, but he basically implies in other discourses he has directly mentioned. I am means a combination of physical processes and mental processes and interconnection processes. Right? So although we have these three elements working together, mental process and its interconnection with the physical process, we don't give a damn, right? We have no clue of what is going on, right? For the physical process, yes, of course, from the morning that you wake up from the bed till you go to the bed, we try to take care of this physical body. And I'm not going to explain how. You all are very much aware and you all know what you do. And we are going even to the extent to take a life insurance, right, to take care of our body. Okay. And therefore, the Blessed One says, if you want to understand yourself, if you want to bring your attention to yourself, first start with your body, right? So that is why in our practice, irrespective of how advanced you are, we do our walking, we do our sitting. That way we bring our attention to the body. So to bring the attention to the body, in the discourse, Buddha has given 14 methods, right? Starting with breath and the postures, semi-postures, and the basic elements, and then even what happens after you die. So in other words, basically, he has covered the entire spectrum of body from the time you conceived in mother's womb, which is the breath, and then to the time that you die. So there is the entire physical process, whatever activities that are happening during that range, he has taken and said, this is how you can be mindful. So we have discussed those things in very detail, and Chatu may be able to give you those detailed discussions we have had on that. And that's the basic summary of being mindful of the physical process. Then when you are mindful of the physical process, what happens is you are bringing the attention that is wandering around the universe to this universe called the body or the physical process. Then you understand there is something else. Whenever you sit, you complain, thoughts are coming. You complain that back is paining, complain, knees are paining. So a lot of aches and pains are taking place. So which means the body is emitting some sensations, and we have some interpretations of those sensations. Aches and pain means when you sit, since you are not moving, the two surfaces are touched together. Naturally, there is a friction. Naturally, there is some reaction going on, and heat is generated. That heat generated is not accepted by the mind. So, in other words, what I want to tell is, by taking the attention to the body, Buddha is opening up the gateway of the mind, which is our reaction to what is happening in the body, that we call feelings, right? So if you like something, if you dislike something, if you have a pleasant feeling, unpleasant feeling, all those are our input, our attitude towards the sensations that we have in the body, right? So that way, by bringing our attention to the body, opens the gateway of the mind. And then Buddha says, you can be mindful if those things are happening. Now not the body, now not the breath. You can be mindful of those, either physical or either the pleasant feeling or unpleasant feeling, or there will have situations where you have no pleasant, no unpleasant feelings. You can be mindful of that range as well, right? So usually when you take feelings, on one hand you have the highest pleasant feeling, on the other hand you will have the worst unpleasant feeling, and in between there will have 0.0 if you take negative and positive, and there will have 0 where you will not understand whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, right? So this is the range of the feeling, right? So we have discussed that as well in detail. And what he says is, when those things are coming up, I don't give you any other medication. Just be aware. If it is unpleasant, try to bear it up as much as possible. If it is pleasant, don't hug it, don't grab it, don't crave it. Just be aware that you have a pleasant feeling, right? That is what most of us miss. If it is pleasant feeling, we don't tell anybody. We think the practice is going so well, marvelous. And don't talk about, even in a report, you don't say that. But if there is a small ache, then it becomes a big story, right? So that is how our mind is working. So Blessed One says, try and give the same treatment to both these scenarios, right? So once you don't react to pleasant and unpleasant feeling, and then the mind is getting quietly neglected, mind is unable to do its usual drama, right? So it gets thrown into the backstage, right? So in other words, the mind is now is showing its true colors. There are a lot of mind waves. There are a lot of energies that have affected our feelings, since those feelings are not being reacted upon. So the mind is showing whatever that has been in its container. You have opened the lid now, so you can see what is in the container in the mind, right? So we have discussed about seven pairs that the mind is having, and they work as, a wave, right? There will have a sensual desire on one hand in the mind. It is not actual sense pleasure, but your willingness to have sense pleasure, right? On one hand, you will have in the mind, and at the same time, in the same mind, sometime later, you will not have that. Similarly, hatred, you will have ill will, and after some time, in the same mind, it will go away. These are not two different minds or many different minds. Same mind is changing its color, like a chameleon, changing its shades, changing its shapes, right? Blessed One says, what Blessed One says is, if you have sensual desire, don't worry. It's the nature of the mind. Accept it. And if you don't have, just be aware of that as well. And when you have hatred in your mind, again, it's nothing to complain about yourself. It's what the mind is having, and it's the only thing the mind is aware of. Be aware when it is there. When it is not there, also be aware, right? So that whatever the way, you just ride the way, right? And then there will have a situation where you will not have either hatred or the sensual pleasure or the opposite of that. Then the mind will have blank, or I would rather say a lethargic situation. You will not be lethargic, you will not be sleepy if you are worked up, or if you have some sense pleasure, you will be very active. But if those things are not there, then you feel very lethargic, very lazy, and very sleepy, right? And it's in the same mind, and you can be aware of that as well. It's not a crime. And the same mind, after some time, will be very awakened, right? So once that is, those waves of the mind have been taken care of, then mind is gradually leading into the spiritual side, right? You will have contracted and distracted mind. You will have exalted and unexalted mind. You will have surpassed and unsurpassed mind. You will have concentrated mind, unconcentrated mind. You will have liberated and unliberated mind. All these things are the same thing. In the same mind, all these things take place, right? Why they happen is to put you into trouble, to give you some unhappiness. The habit of the mind, the function of the mind is always trying to find something where you can have something to complain about, where you can have something to worry about. That is what the mind is trying to do when you get closer to the mind and see what it is trying to sniff something nasty and make you unhappy. And if it is giving something very peaceful and very happy thing, then it is getting ready for some other type of war. Take you as high as possible and drop you from there, right? So Blessed One says, all these things will happen. You simply be aware. So this is what we have discussed for about, how many years, Chatu? About 2 years. And I did that in maybe 10-15 minutes, right? Now, can I kindly request Chatu to go through the last bit of the mindfulness of the mind?
Thus he dwells contemplating the nature of the mind in regard to himself. or he dwells contemplating the nature of the mind in regard to others, or he dwells contemplating the nature of the mind in regard to himself and in regard to others, or he dwells contemplating the nature of origination in the mind, or he dwells contemplating the nature of dissolution in the mind, or he dwells contemplating the nature of origination and dissolution in the mind, or else mindfulness that there is a mind is established in him, just as far is necessary for a full measure of knowledge and a full measure of mindfulness. And he dwells independent and without being attached to anything in the world. In this way, monks, a monk dwells contemplating the nature of the mind in the mind.
Although it is in English, but looks like a bit of trick, right? It says, what does it say? Thus he dwells contemplating the nature of the mind in regard to himself, right? So this is not only applicable to the mind, it applicable to all the four foundations of mind, right? Even especially in being mindful of the body, in 14 places he is giving this paragraph, right? What it simply says is, if you are mindful of the body, you will be mindful of the body that relates to you. In other words, internal mindfulness, right? And at the same time, others, outside mindfulness. We call it ajjata bahijja in Pali, right? You will be mindful of yourself and you will be mindful of outside mindfulness as well. And similarly, that is about the body. Similarly, when it comes to feelings, you will be mindful of feelings when it is within you. You will be mindful when the feeling is not within you. When it is outside, you will be mindful, right? And when it comes to mind, also he says the same thing, right? So this is bit okay. When it is mindful, when it is within you, you can understand, you can relate to it, you can fathom it. But how is it outside is a question. So when I explain this, usually in books, they usually give one way of explanation, but from the practice, I think we can explain it in 3 different ways. So far as I am concerned, I may be wrong, but this is how I am explaining. The first one, when you have any of those, since we are talking about minds, when you have any of those minds with you, there is nothing for me to explain. You are mindful and you know that you are in that particular mind. Say, for example, mind with a sensual desire. You know it is with you, right? And you know it is not within you, or you are not in sensual desire, or you are not in the mind this way. Suppose there is a sensual desire and you are mindful of that. When you are mindful of that, suddenly you hear a noise, right? When you hear a noise, you are no longer with the mindfulness. Your mindfulness has gone out, right? So this is what it says: internal and external. The translations in other books, and especially in Sinhala, is when we call ajjata bahijja, it is internal and external. Your mindfulness stays in with whatever you are doing, and when it is attacked by something else not related to what you are mindful of, then it becomes external, right? So that is one way you can understand, and it is clear in the third one. He says ajjata bahijja, which means you are mindful when it is in, you are mindful when it is out. You are mindful when it is internal. You are mindful when it is external. What do you mean by that is, when you are mindful of one thing, say the particular mind you have, and it goes to a sound, once again it comes, once again it goes, once again it comes, once again it goes. Your mindfulness just swings between, right? Or these two are happening. You can be in the back seat and you may be observing both, right? Sometimes, okay, I can see the thoughts that are occurring in me. Sometimes I'm disturbed by the sound. So you are not affected by any of these things, whether it's internal or external. You simply are aware, right? So it's even for body, it's the same thing. When you are mindful of your breath, and if you get some thoughts, you are no longer in the breath, no longer in the body. It is external, right? Feelings, the same thing, right? In other words, whatever the distraction that comes on your way can be considered external. So that is one way I'm explaining this Ajjata Bahijja, or internal, external, or in himself and others. And to give another way is the deduction method. The deduction method means, when you have a sensual desire or ill will or sleepiness, you very well know that it is happening to me this way. So therefore, you can assume it's the same way that happens to the other people as well, right? So that is how you deduce from what is happening to you. You use that knowledge to assume about other people. So that is what is explained or given in most of the books, right? From your experience, you assume that it will happen to the others as well in the same manner, right? And the other thing that I'm usually explaining is, the third method is to understand this internal, external evolution of the object, right? When I say evolution of the object, since we are talking about minds again, in the mind, if you have ill will, or if you have sensual desire, or if you feel that you are very well with your object, and if you feel that your mind is so exalted, is developing so well, you know it is happening, right? If I take only the easy example, when a lot of thoughts are going on, and you are observing your thoughts. When you keep on observing your thoughts, you initially start observing your thoughts, the thoughts that have surfaced already, right? When you do that, the thoughts that are coming to the surface, you keep on being mindful, and they don't go any further, they subside straight away, right? And then you start seeing thoughts that have not developed to that extent, but still coming up, still there, right? And then if you become mindful of them, you can see still there are thoughts which are even below that, right? It's like you go to a very clear pool, or say lotus pool, or lotus pond, and you sit and observe the water, you can see there will have flowers already in full bloom above water. There will have flowers which have come halfway. There will have flowers even below that. There will have flowers which have just come out of mud. There will have buds still trying to pinch, trying to poke the mud and trying to come out. So like that, our thought process, mind waves are also like that. So you can see this evolution, right? So if there is a thought that has fully blown out, then it is something gone, right? And if there are things that still yet to come, they are inside, right? And if I explain the same thing using breath, breath is something that is coming from outside. So when you keep your attention very close, say for example, at the entrance of the nostril, when you are really aligned with the natural breathing process, you may be able to see there are breaths queuing up at the entrance of the nostril to enter. So those air elements or air bubbles which have not yet come in are external. Those that are already in are internal, right? So what he is saying is, we can be so clear of the things external and internal when you don't react and when you take a back seat and then do only the observation, right? And what he simply wants to say is that it is the nature. The breath that is outside, whether it is outside or whether it is inside, it is the same breath, same air, right? So thoughts is a mental wave that happens with energy, some energy that arises, which converts into something when it comes to a certain level, right? So he says those things are happening, right? You will be able to simply observe when you really practice mindfulness. And those are the three methods I'm explaining this internal, external thing. And in that paragraph, is also giving another phenomena, another nature that is taking place, which is dwells in contemplating the nature of origination in the mind, or he dwells in contemplating the nature of dissolution in the mind, dwells in contemplating the nature of origination and dissolution in the mind. This is another thing. Most of the time, when we have a mind state which we don't like, we think it is permanent. It is never going to go away. And we keep only talking about that. But what he says is, all these things arises and they don't last at least a second. They pass away. But we give an identification, right? So by being mindful, what you simply do is, as I explained in the pond example, is you can see these buds are coming up and come into the full bloom and then pass away. Right? And it keeps happening. And if you can keep observing that, you will simply observe the nature of arising, passing away. Initially, you will not be able to observe the passing away. You will see only arising, because our mind is so addicted to see things that are appearing, things that would be born, right? But when you keep on observing the things that are appearing, invariably you start seeing the disappearance as well, right? So when you start seeing the disappearance, you will be more relieved to see anything that comes is going out, anything that comes is going out, any breath that comes in is going out. So you start seeing not only the arising, you start seeing even the passing. And some people, when they start seeing passing away, they pay more attention to passing away, because passing away is when you have something, you have the friction. Right? When it goes away, the friction goes away. So they tend to observe the end of things, end of thoughts, end of pain, end of in-breath, end of out-breath, right? So you get more close to dissolution, right? So once you start seeing those two, then it comes to a state. It is not only just arising, it is not only just passing away. This is constantly happening. I remember someone said the other day, it is like when water is boiling, right? Just keeps boiling all the time. It doesn't stay in one motion, right? Or in an analog TV, when there is no picture and when you just turn it on, There will have bubbles appearing and disappearing, appearing and disappearing. So you may be able to see such a situation when you keep on observing your mind. They come and go, come and go, come and go. Even in the body, when you really bring your attention to the body, when your mind is really with the body, you may see that this body is not something solid. It's like a beehive, right? Always buzzing and always something is happening. So that is, the Blessed One says, is the nature, right? It is there even now. Our mind is not sharp enough to see, but it is happening. So therefore, it is not something that Blessed One is giving to us. Blessed One is giving us the tool to see it. It is happening all the time. And that nature is what he is going to explain in detail in the next foundation. Next foundation is called the nature foundation, or we call it Dhammanupassana, right? So in Dhammanupassana, this little paragraph he has given after each and every body contemplation or body mindfulness, after feeling mindfulness, after mindfulness of the mind, he has been giving this small paragraph. Now he's taking in full and explaining same thing in a different way in the section called Dhammanupassana, or we call it mindful of the nature. So can I kindly request Chatu to read that part as well, if you don't mind?
And how monks does a monk dwell contemplating the nature of things in various things? Here, monks, a monk dwells contemplating the nature of things in various things in the 5 hindrances. And how monks does a monk dwell contemplating the nature of things in various things in the 5 hindrances? Here, monks, a monk having sensual desire in himself knows there is sensual desire in myself, or not having sensual desire in himself, he knows there is no sensual desire in myself. How there is an arising of sensual desire that has not arisen, that he knows. And how there is an abandonment of sensual desire that has arisen, that also he knows. And how there is a non-arising of abandoned sensual desire again in the future, that also he knows. Having ill will in himself, he knows there is ill will in myself. Or not having ill will in himself, he knows there is no ill will in myself. How there is an arising of ill will that has not arisen, that he knows. And how there is an abandonment of ill will that has arisen, that also he knows. And how there is a non-arising of abandoned ill will again in the future, that also he knows. Having sloth and torpor in himself, he knows there is sloth and torpor in myself. Or not having sloth and torpor in himself, he knows there is no sloth and torpor in myself. How there is an arising of sloth and torpor that has not arisen, that he knows. And how there is an abandonment of sloth and torpor that has arisen, that also he knows. And how there is a non-arising of abandoned sloth and torpor again in the future, that also he knows. Having agitation and worry in himself, he knows there is agitation and worry in myself. Or not having agitation and worry in himself, he knows there is no agitation and worry in myself. And how there is a rising of agitation and worry that has not arisen, that he knows. And how there is abandonment of agitation and worry that has arisen, that also he knows. And how there is a non-arising of abandoned agitation and worry again in the future, that also he knows. Having doubt in himself, he knows there is doubt in myself. Or not having doubt in himself, he knows there is no doubt in myself. And how there is a rising of doubt that has not arisen, that he knows. And how there is abandonment of doubt that has arisen, that also he knows. And how there is non-arising of abandoned doubt again in the future, that also he knows. Thus he dwells contemplating the nature of things in various things in regard to himself, or he dwells contemplating the nature of things in various things in regard to others.
All right. A lot of things. I know it is not going to your head. Not necessary as well. And let me start with saying, now he's talking about nature. When they're talking about nature, the first thing he is taking is hindrances, right? And when you hear the word hindrances, you get its literal meaning. Hindrances means some obstacle that you will have, right? But let me put it this way. The word hindrances does not sufficiently explain the Pali term. The Pali term they're using is nivarana. Nivarana means anything that blocks achieving the full enlightenment. Hindrances in any way does not come close to it, right? So therefore, the word hindrances does not do justice to the actual Pali term, right? And I know English may not have a word for new. So this is why I'm saying the things that we discuss here are the mental factors that blocks, that takes you away from the final enlightenment, right? Or Buddha's path. Okay, so just keep that in mind, not just hindrances. If you keep hindrances in mind, just keep in mind that the meaning of hindrances in this context is any mind factors that blocks achieving the full enlightenment. Okay, and in this chapter, the Blessed One has given 5 such hindrances, right? The 5 hindrances he has given are sensual desire, ill will, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and the skeptical doubts, right? So these 5 things, although we call here as hindrances, we have discussed sometime in the past when I was explaining 4 foundations of mindfulness in detail. Here it is considered as some mental factor that blocks full enlightenment. And on the other hand, when you start your practice, it is not hindrances as such. It is a defilement. It is an impurity that you have in your mind that the factor that will not let you come to the path at all. So therefore, these 5 things are playing 2 roles, right? Initially, there will be a defilement, and you may not be able to come to the path because of that. But when it comes to this stage of hindrances, or talking about them as part of the nature, then it is an evolution of the same, right? So we will see how it happens. When it is defilement, we call it obsessional defilement. Obsessional defilement means there are 3 types of defilements. When we purify ourselves, when we try to attain the full enlightenment, there are 3 defilements that we have got to tackle. The first one is the transgressional defilement. Transgressional defilements are those defilements that if you commit any transgressional defilement, you definitely know, and even the outsiders will know, such as breaking 5 precepts. Right? If you kill an animal, you know that you have killed an animal, and anyone who sees will also know. And if it is wrong, you may have to go to courts and jail as well. Right? So like that, the entire world is may also be aware. So it's not something hidden. That is transgressional defilement. We are not talking about transgressional defilements now. We are talking here about obsessional defilements. Obsessional defilements, you only know. If you have sensual desire, the person sitting next to you won't know. If you have ill will, right, you may be thinking, I should punch this person sitting next to me. That person doesn't know. And when he gets up, hello, how are you? He doesn't know that you have been thinking so bad about it, right? So therefore, obsessional defilements are those defilements that you only know, the others won't, right? And there is another layer, which we are not again going to discuss here, is called underlying tendencies. The underlying tendencies or the mental corruptions, those defilements even you don't. They come in deceiving form. Yeah, what do you call deceptive, right? Say, for example, instead of you may feel instead of coming here, it is better to contact your friends and collect some money and send that money to Sri Lanka or some poor country, because people are doing so bad these days. Is it good or bad? By the look of it, it's very good, right? But what it actually does is avoid you coming here. Avoid your practice, right? So therefore, I'm just giving one example. There are plenty of such examples, right? Those defilements are deceptive, and they are called mental corruptions, right? Mind will do something to avoid you going for the best possible. Give something inferior so that you are kept away from trying the path, right? Which we are not going to discuss in detail now. I just want to mention that there are three defilements. Here we are talking about this obsessional defilement. And obsessional defilements, initially, when you start the practice, you had sensual desire. You had ill will. And when you come and sit, initially I remember when I started my practice, it was a terrible thing. I can't keep awake. Come after work and take a shower and then go and sit, sleep pretty well. Half an hour, 45 minutes, no disturbances, right? And I thought I would never be able to come out of it, right? But it takes time. And when you continue, no matter what happens, you will have to continue doing it. And then there are ways you can come out of it. I'm not going to discuss them now. So like that, what I want to say is, at the beginning, all these defilements are playing a part, right? So when those defilements are playing a part, you continue your practice, you continue your timetable, you gradually increase the time that you practice. Then what happens is mind get used to this pattern, right? And mind, because you are not doing anything, because the mind can't take you to do anything else, mind will gradually get closer to the object that you are trying to pay attention to. While walking, you may have walked 45 minutes, but you actually have seen the sensations of the feet maybe 2, 3 steps, 4 steps, right? You may have tried to observe your breath 45 minutes, but you may have seen only 2 or 3 breaths, right? So these 2 or 3 breaths, when you continue, it becomes 4 or 5, and it becomes 6, 7. And suddenly, all of a sudden, you don't know. You have been breath for some time. And after some time, you don't know what happened, right? So like that, when you keep practicing, your obsessional defilements will not be able to take over you. Your attention will gradually go to the object. So once the attention gradually goes to the object, then you have tamed your defilements, right? But what happens is, after another 15 minutes, 20 minutes, they come up again, at very rapid pace, right? And then you still keep doing it, and then you will be able to keep your attention to your breath or to your walking, although there are disturbances from the mind. Sensual desires are playing and ill will is playing, but you don't care, you still can see through those things, and you will be able to pay attention to the breath. So that in that manner, you may be able to sharpen your mind using the obsessional defilements. When you sharpen your mind, when your mind comes to the body, and then it gradually progresses and go to the feelings and then go to the mind, and then it comes to a stage, you are able to observe your breath. You are able to observe your feeling. You are able to observe your mind. And there is nothing that is really disturbing you. Right? All what you see is, all what you have is these sensual desires and restlessness and worry, skeptical doubt and ill will things happening all the time. So simply, in other words, what has happened is, although it came as defilement and although it tried to block your path, you go through that. Once you go through that, finally at the end also you find the same. It has not completely gone away. But there is a difference here. The difference is you are now not worried. Although those things are there, you are not worried. Therefore, you call it, now you use the term not defilements, you use the term nivarana, or the mental factors that disturb achieving the full enlightenment. Right? So what before Buddha, when they had these defilements, what they did was they suppressed them. How did they suppress? Their technique was to try your level best to build your concentration. You build your concentration and you try to have your attention all the time to the breath or to the walking. So if you have your attention to the breath or whatever the object you have, and if you can see your breath from the beginning to its progress and to the end, and then you can see the out breath once again starts and progresses, and then you keep observing this cycle, you are with the breath. If you are with the breath, no sensual desire, no ill will, no sloth and torpor, no restlessness or worry, you don't have any doubt because you are with the breath, right? And in other words, let me put it this way: your sensual desire now completely concentrated on the breath. You don't have any sensual desire for anything else, but you have 100% desire to maintain the breath, right? And as a result, you have ill will towards anything that disturbs it, right? And if you lose both this, then without your knowledge, you will go into sleep, right? And because you will have to maintain the concentration continuously, always there will be some sort of an agitation, right? So therefore, before Buddha, the technique they used was concentration, and therefore they had suppressed these defilements, right? So what Buddha did was, when he, from his practice, he did not suppress it. He said, don't take the object as your main focal point. Take the mindfulness as the focal point. Keep the mindfulness to the fore. No matter what happens, you keep observing, right? When you keep observing, you can't suppress it, right? Whatever happens, you just start observing. Then, since you don't try to maintain the object, since you don't try to maintain the breath, these things are bubbling up, right? When they bubble up, then if you really fall down to its attack, then it's a defilement. If you don't fall down, and if you can see it's arising and see it's passing away, then you become Buddha's disciple. Right? There is nothing to attack you. Right? So this is the simple explanation of the 5 hindrances that is given in this section, right? And the basic introduction, right? And I will be taking how it happens in our practice in the next session, right? In detail, how these defilements are playing, how we really handle these defilements, and how it is coming as part of nature, and the relation to mindfulness we will be discussing in the next session, right, on Wednesday. So hope this has provided some background as to what Buddha actually is trying to attack, right? Not to suppress hindrances, but let it come out and see how it affects, is what he's trying to do. So we will do that in the next session. So with that, may you all be well, peaceful, and happy. And we can take a few minutes for discussion. If you have any questions, if you have any report to be provided about your practice. Chatu will come around. Thank you for coming. She only suggested Wednesday, and she went missing suddenly. But it was a good suggestion, though. Other people have made use of it.
So you say you look at the arising, and then you get good at looking at the arising, and then you start seeing the dissolution, and then you get tuned to see the dissolution. Do you ever like if you get tuned to see the dissolution, do you ever see the arising again?
Yeah, that is what it says. When you see dissolution, you start seeing arising and dissolution after that. So our tendency of not everyone, most of us mind is to see only appearance, because we want to hold things, we want to have things. So your attention is only to appearance, right? And when you keep on observing appearance, you see it appears and fades away. And then you start seeing how it fades away. So once you start seeing disappearance, and you start understanding that observing disappearance without panicking is much more peaceful than observing the appearance. Because not having something is taking away the trouble of what you had, right? So it becomes more peaceful, it becomes more what do you call, happier state, right? So when you start seeing that, the nature is working irrespective of whether we observe or not. So then you start seeing the whole process. Right? When you see appearance, when you see disappearance, in both these instances, your liking is there. You see appearance because you like that. You see disappearance because observing disappearance is much more enjoyable than appearance. Right? So in both those instances, there is an underlying tendency of desire. Right? But once you start seeing the full cycle, it is completely attacked.
Do you have to do anything to actively see the appearance after seeing the dissolution, or it just happens?
Yeah, after seeing disappearance, there is nothing for you to do. Even to see dissolution, there is nothing for you to do. Right? What we will have to do is, what Blessed One says is, observe your in-breath. When you observe your in-breath, do you need any effort to see the out-breath? it happens. It naturally happens. Right? So therefore, there is nothing for you to do. If you don't do things, then what is happening can be seen. Because we try to do things, we can't see the nature. Right? Our mind is always trying to give you the attitude that you have control over things. So that is why it is asking the question whether we can do something. Right? So that is a shrewd nature of the mind. So Blessed One is attacking that very tactfully. Don't do anything. Keep the mindfulness to the fore, and you sit back and watch. You sit back and watch. Things are happening. Your involvement is not necessary. But we start with doing something. What we do is not doing anything, because we all the time keep doing things. So therefore, we'll have to bring our intention not to do something. Right? So then it gradually reverse process starts.
Just an observation on my walking meditation. So as I was walking, I felt like a lightness in my body. And then I realized, firstly, I was getting pains on my lower part of the leg, right leg. And then I was concentrating, and then sort of went away. And then I had a pain on my left hip, and I was focusing on that, and that sort of went away. And then I was quite focused, and I felt a lightness. And then so initially I was focusing on the pain, and then sort of it went away. Then I was focusing on the walking, just the normal walking, just observing the walking. And there was a quite lightness in my body. And then after a while, I realized that I had to actually make an effort to walk. It wasn't as natural. I just want to make an.
Yeah, that's a good observation. And since you have been doing it for some time, those things may happen, and even others may have observed things. And for the benefit of others, and also to remind how we present a report, it is better to start saying, this is how I try to observe my walking. Say, I observe my walking process, or I observe my feet, the sole of the feet, right? And then when I do that, these are my observations of the sole of the feet. This is how I place it, and this is how that placing is completed, or this is what I feel when I lift, this is what I feel when I move it, this is what I feel when I lower it down, and this is what this is how I actually place it, and this is what I actually feel, and then whatever feelings, say for example, coolness or hardness or softness, whatever you feel just to the sole of the feet, or whether you feel it even higher up, you can mention all that, right? So since you have given all those details in the past, I'm not going to ask, but it may be very important for the others. When you present a report, those things can be given, because that gives an idea to what extent you have been with your walking process, right? So coming back to the things that you have mentioned, and considering the previous report, when you bring your attention to the body, you will feel the body in one of the elements, or you will see the nature of one of the elements or many elements in the body, in the physicality. Our body is mainly made of not hands, legs, and trunk, and head, and eyes, and all those things. The fundamental elements of physical existence is earth element, air element, fire element, and the water element, right? So we may start seeing those. So in this instance, you have felt some lightness, which means that is one side of the earth element. When you feel earth element, You may feel heaviness or lightness, or you may feel roughness or softness, or you may, there's one more, I don't remember. That's okay. So in this case, it is softness. So when you have been observing that softness, your attention is in the body. When the attention is in the body, the mind is now trying to give its interpretation. That is why you felt pain in that place, pain in this place, right? So since you have kept the mindfulness to the fore, you don't fight with the pain, saying, no, I want to take my attention to the walking. You have become that particular pain now, so you observe it. When you observe it, since there is no reaction, it's a, if there is a reaction, then it aggravates, right? And it just fades away, and the same thing bubbles from somewhere else. To take your attention again, you do the same thing, mindfulness to the fore, you observe it, and then it keeps going around, right? When it keeps going around, what you do is you simply don't do anything. When you don't do anything, you introduce your mind the concept of not doing something. Then you forget to walk as well, right? So intentional activities fade away. We call it mental volition. Our mind is always having very strong selection approach, right? Which we call sankhara, right? That mental volition is attacked here. So the only thing that you were doing intentionally was walking. Even that was taken away because you have not identified with anything that was happening. So you have attacked the self-identification on one hand. On the other hand, the mental volition, right? So therefore, sometimes you keep walking and you forget to walk, right? Or you lift the leg, you don't keep it forward, there is no energy to keep it forward, you go backward, right? Or sometimes you don't have strength to hold your leg, you may drop down, right? Or you may walk like a drunkard person. Right? So all sorts of things will happen. So people may think when those things happen, something is going wrong. It is not something is going wrong. It is when, if you think in the practice that something is wrong, it is a progress. Because you have not experienced that, you think it's a wrong thing. Right? If you think that the practice is going so well, then it's a mistake. Because you like what is happening. Right? So, good. If you can tell something about your sitting also, good. Better. Give me a second. Give me a second.
So as I was sitting down, I was focusing on my breath. Just not just the breath, just the movement of my belly actually. And I was really tired, so I kind of dozed off for a little bit. Then I got the energy back. That I felt that I got the energy back. Then I was focusing on the movement. One thing I do want to mention that there was a moment that I was feeling I don't know, like to use this word, but it's like happiness, like that feeling. And I lost my focus because I was trying to sort of enjoy it. So I lost my focus. And then I came, then I realized it, and I came back, and then I was focusing on it, and it sort of faded away. Then I sort of felt like I missed that sensation. But anyhow, I couldn't sort of get it back. But that's what I was feeling during that meditation
Especially when you practice after work, what happens is you feel drowsy and you feel lethargic. And during that period, what happens is the battery is getting recharged. You get energized, right? And after some time, you gain the momentum. You gain the momentum, you will be able to, because if you go home, what you do is you do things to relax. Now here, you actually relax without doing anything. So therefore, recharge is fast. Right? And so once you gain the energy, as you have said, you directly can't say, you are saying you're observing belly, but you don't say anything that you observed, but it has gone into a state which has given some enjoyment, some happiness, right? So it is ideal if you can tell what you observed in the belly, how you observed your in-breath and out in the belly, and then how you went to this happy state. Because in between, there are certain things happening. Yes.
That's what I was observing when I say belly. I was observing the movement. I was observing that movement. When I said happy, maybe I'm missing the in between, but I was feeling it in my shoulders all of a sudden. I could feel it around here.
Yeah, no, that's natural. What happens is we are not used to being mindful. So when the mindfulness starts working, it doesn't require anyone's help. It takes its course, right? But when we actually start noticing those things, it has gone some distance. So what we will have to do is you will have to keep on doing this on a daily basis. So then you know you have started this way and you have ended up here. So you can start mapping the path. So there were things that happen in the path is very important to see how you reach there and then push you from there what to do. Right. So the next time if you can produce that missing bit, then we can exactly know what is happening. I know, but it has worked. It has worked. When mindfulness starts working, it is since you are energizing yourself, you start enjoying that happiness. And in the few sentences that you mentioned after happiness, you have tried to enjoy it and you have lost completely the focus, what should be done. And you have been looking for that. And because of that expectation, it has not come back and you have completely gone away from what should be doing. Right? So that is how they just derail the practice. But if you keep mapping each and every stage or whatever possible, then the possibility of derailment is very minimal. But this is how it happens. So you know it happens. You can go ready next time. Contribute anything? Yeah. Yeah, talking to you.
I just wanted to say I think the correlation between walking and sitting. I've tried sitting, and if I do the walking, there's a trance that happens which I never thought would, and then I come inside and it's a whole different level. I didn't meditate when I came in here because I had a persistent mosquito that wanted to bite my foot, and I didn't want to. So, but I did a meditation before I came, before everyone came. Yeah, so I think it's important. I have never thought of it that way before, and today, when I went out before class, I realised that the two are like a marriage, and if you let one go, it just doesn't quite gel.
What actually happens there is these are two spiritual faculties. Walking is giving you energy, right? The other one is giving you concentration, right? So when these two are married, it's a harmonious spiritual path. Otherwise, if you just come and try to concentrate and sit, it sometimes becomes too straining, right? But if you have a walk and come back, you energize yourself, physically exercise.
Sort of buzzing.
Buzzing in your tongue.
I had it when I came back this afternoon after I'd done my meditation. And it's sort of a buzzing. Yeah. I can't explain. It's like a tingle. Yeah. Like when you eat lifesaver or a fruit tingle. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Time's up. Any questions? Any more? No? Right, is there anything? No? Okay, right. And it is, although I have not requested any report this time from everybody, but it is better to give a report at least once in 3 weeks so that we know what's going on, so everybody can be assisted. So the reporting is therefore important, right? Okay. With that, we can go to the last section of the program, which is transferring the positive energies to those who can receive them.